Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today, I have the first guest that I ever had on the X22 Report Spotlight, David Morgan. David is a precious metals aficionado armed with degrees in finance, economics, engineering. He's appeared on CNBC, Fox Business, and others. He is the creator and owner of the Morgan Report newsletter. You can see his work on themorganreport.com. You can also check him out on his YouTube channel, The Morgan Report. And I am very honored to have him back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Welcome back, David.
Well, thank you so much for having me back. And yeah, it was very nice of you to have me as the first one on your new series. I really thought that it was very nice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was 1 year ago. And it's been a year already. But let's start out with the global economy. The U.S. economy, it's looking like it's completely falling apart. I mean, if you look at the real economic indicators like shipping, manufacturing, retail, real estate, what we're seeing, it's all heading down. Is this what you're seeing? Are we in a downward trend right now?
Oh, absolutely. We are in a downward trend. And as I've often said, there's really no correlation at this point in history between the financial system or financial markets and the physical economy. I mean, the talking heads that have a one-way attitude toward the financial markets will point at numbers that are increasing in size. Of course, we know that there's been, major corrections in all the major stock markets worldwide. I'm not trying to discount that, and of course, that is reflective. The realities do catch up with each other eventually. So the point I'm making is that we are in a large downtrend. If you look at just a couple of the headlines here as of today, and Dave, I just want to editorialize the comment a little bit. It's so difficult now with so much happening so quickly. It seems like time is accelerating, if that makes any sense, because what I used to get for news items in, let's say, a week's time will probably be in a 24-hour time frame now. I mean, there's just so much happening, so much being reported on. You have instant news with the press of a button with the internet and smartphones, etc. But moving on, I'll just pick out a couple here. One is from Zero Hedge, which has kind of become the go-to website, in my view, for the alternative news, and they really usually get a lot of articles that are spot on. This one talks markets at risk, tepid, uninspiring G20 proves investor hopes were pure fantasy. They go on to talk about their model of the Keynesian economic system and why printing money isn't working. That's my interpretation. It shows a picture of the G20, and almost everyone in the photo is smiling except Janet Yellen, and underneath it says Janet's not amused. And I don't consider her to be the sharpest tool in the shed, but she's far from dumb. And even if she doesn't see it on an intellectual basis, I think she feels that on an emotional basis. These people are doomed. The economy is under extreme stress, and they don't have a clue on what to do. The idea that investor hopes of coordinated policy actions proved to be pure fantasy, said TCW's, and I can't pronounce his last name, David Longever, a former China specialist with the U.S. Treasury. It's every country for themselves, quote unquote. This is kind of what happens during a breakup phenomena, which we're having now. I mean, the world is all interdependent. We're interconnected. We need the ebb and flow. We need a currency system. We need a financial system that's honest is what we need. But in the current paradigm, we need the U.S. dollar, the reserve currency, to have some stability, which it has had at the expense of everyone else. And now everyone else is, well aware of the game. And so it's starting to unravel. And unfortunately, as I probably said before, but I think it's so important it bears repeating, when I read the book Collapse of Complex Societies, the whole idea that I got out of the whole book going through Mesopotamian, Byzantine, and all the empires that have collapsed is once it starts down, it's really not that important to know why. Oh, it was a monetary system. No, it was the agricultural system. No, it was war. And usually it's a combination, by the way. Right. But once it starts down, you really can't push it back up. And that's the problem. We're unwinding, Dave, and we're not going to push it back up. Yes, it'll ebb and flow, and markets will go up and down, and prices will change, and all of that. It's not a one-way street that goes straight one direction. but the overall trend has changed dramatically, probably from 2008. And we're in a system now that, as this U.S. Treasury official said, it's every country for themselves. Well, you might take that from the macro schedule to the micro schedule, and it's every man for himself. Now, I don't want to be that bleak, but I want to produce that idea to get all of our listeners to think about that statement. You don't have to agree with that statement, but take it to heart and pause and think about where it really is and what it really means. Certainly, we need each other, we need community, but we need them at a SOC level. It's what Cliff High has coined as self-organizing community. You need each other at a very local level, and just let the powers that be run around with their heads cut off. They're absolutely useless to us.
Like you said, it seems like it's every country for themselves. If we look at Europe, they went to negative rates. Japan decided to go to negative rates. The U.S. increased the interest rates, and then they started talking about negative rates and a cashless society. Does this make any sense whatsoever, why all these different areas are doing so many different things?
No, it absolutely amplifies what you and I are discussing, which means they don't know what to do. So if something doesn't work, try more of it. So if, adding the debt problem is the problem, let's create more debt. And if zero interest rate policy doesn't work, well, let's take it negative. I mean, this shows the absolute, complete, total insanity of the powers that be, and yet they don't even see it. I mean, some may, but very few, and any that do see it won't speak out because they don't want to lose their pension or their status or whatever they covet. And so this is the time for truth. I mean, this is the time where we really need, individuals. And it happens. I mean, it happens every day. It happens on the X22 report. Every report. I mean, I listen to you a great deal, not everyone, but believe me, since you started, I've listened to a great deal of your reports. It's a great way for me to save time. And you don't mince words. You just, kind of like me, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. You try not to editorialize too much, although you can, and you're certainly welcome to your opinion. I think it's a very studied opinion. I value your opinion, but regardless, you give a lot of information. So it helps people like me that are overwhelmed trying to keep up with the markets. And I focus just on the commodity. Well, I focus on everything, but I don't focus on individual equities all over the board. I focus primarily on resources that are undervalued that can help people build and maintain wealth through the paradigm shift. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking now more at the solution than the problem. I've talked about the problem for years, and I think most people that listen to the X22 report are well acquainted with the problem and problems and how they're developing and what the trends are that we're discussing. And they know that financial preparation is important, and it is, but there's so much more to it than just financial preparation. I mean, this emotional charge that goes along with a huge dislocation is extremely difficult for humans. Humans want to be in a safe, secure, and known certain environment. And there's more uncertainty almost by the minute nowadays. And this is why markets move so rapidly up and down, and the volatility increases, because that's a reflection of the uncertainty that people hold for what's good, what's bad, what's going to happen in the future. And the answer is they don't know. And it's obvious that the powers that be have no clue, not only what's going to take place, but how to correct it.
You're talking about solutions. What type of solutions are you talking about? Give us like some examples.
Well, I'm piggybacking on the work of Chris Martenson mainly. Okay. I mean, there was this conference that I tried to get going in Las Vegas last month called, and you can look at it, the website's still up, it's called solutionsconference.us. And Chris and Adam Taggart wrote a book called Prosper, which looks at the 8 forms of capital. But one that they stress is the emotional capital. And that means you need to be able to have enough, let's say, inner strength to be able to navigate through what's coming at us, because, there's so much out there. I mean, we could drill down wherever you want, but I mean, the food crisis is going to be happening more and more, and people really don't talk too much about that. I interviewed one of a leading commodity guys that I've known for years on my special report that I have on the website, and we drilled down on the food crisis. But first of all, this GMO thing is pretty severe, And there's mandates for certain countries coming out of our Congress, the U.S. Congress, that says, you can get this aid, but they'll have a rider on that aid bill that says, but you have to accept GM foods into your country. I mean, this is the way the game is played at this time. There's, the courtocracy, the fascism, the corporate world, those real powers that are basically dictating, mandating, and controlling what takes place to all the plebes, all the little people, all the little nation states, and how they do business and what they do, how they do it, what they can buy, what they can sell, and what they can say. I mean, they take the labeling off now. So you don't even know what you're buying when you're at the food store. I mean, I'm drilling down too far, but I'm going to go really deep. But if you look at the McDonald's hamburger, I mean, it's on a YouTube channel somewhere. And I didn't know this. A friend of mine that's in the mining business, I'm digressing very far, he has small kids, went to McDonald's, and they left a hamburger underneath the seat of their van, and he doesn't clean his van every day. It had been a couple months, and he looks under the seat, and there's this McDonald's hamburger, and it's perfectly intact after 2 months. I mean, what's going on here? I mean, these are questions that we need to ask, and I know we're way off the markets, but this is just one part of the problem. And so if you're putting that kind of stuff into your body, what do you think it's doing to your mind? What do you think it's doing to your cognitive ability? What do you think it's doing to your ability to actually critically think, which none of us are taught to do? It's a self-taught mechanism that I encourage everyone to try, or I shouldn't say try, to apply. And so, again, down the rabbit hole, Dave, but you always let me go. And this is where we need to go. We need to look at not just ourselves to be self-sufficient, but to be more self-sufficient and ask the question, that Kennedy asked. Ask not what you can do for your country or your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Ask what you can do for yourself and how you can apply that to others around you in a scenario where you're going to have to be more self-reliant. That's the direction that we're going to go. And this is something that you're not going to get from the political class, which is absolutely meaningless as far as I'm concerned. It's all theater. It's all trying to give the meme that somebody at the top actually, one, has your interest at heart. Are you kidding me? Or can do something about it, which is even more important to understand, because if you understood that, you wouldn't waste your time looking at the political theater. You'd realize it's more important to increase your skill set, increase your emotional capacity to deal with what's coming ahead. And certainly, and most important of all, is to teach your children well, to be able to pass on real values and real substance. I mean, try, as a thought experiment, try thinking that you're living in the 1880s and what kind of lifestyle that would be like and what would be important in that time frame. I'm not saying we're going there, but we certainly may be.
Just one point before I talk about precious metals of what you said about the food and things like that. I'm kind of a health nut myself. And it's funny because when they don't want to put labels on food or tell you that it's, genetically modified, people think in this country that we're free. But when you don't have the freedom to choose what you're putting in your body, are you truly free at this point? You're not, because you don't know what's in the food. The establishment is telling you, this is good for you, so just believe us. You don't need to know what's in there. And you don't have the freedom of choice at this point to say, well, wait a minute, why do I want to eat this? Look what's in here. And you're absolutely right with everything that you said is coming down from the central bank, coming down from corporations. Basically what they're doing is they're controlling what we do. And no one is using their brains to think or to analyze or to look at and say, something, maybe we shouldn't do this. Why is this? And I think you're absolutely right. And as they continually move down this path, we lose our freedoms every single day by them making decisions for us. And I think we're heading in a terrible direction if this continues.
I couldn't agree more, and well said.
Now, I want to just get back to precious metals for a second. What was it, like maybe a month ago? We saw precious metals surge to about 12 and change. And everyone started to get nervous. Oh, is this it? Is precious metals, is it going to skyrocket at this point? And then all of a sudden, we saw precious metals come down once again. And then it's funny because I made a little prediction that they were going to suppress precious metals right after this, and all of a sudden we saw this huge drop of about $30 to $35, and they brought it right back down. And I noticed they like to keep it around the $1,200 mark. Why do you think this is happening at this point?
Well, there's a lot to be said. I'm going to try to keep it kind of top level and, not, make it simple, because all these markets are very complicated, as we know, because there's so much interplay between high frequency trading, the banking system, what's at stake, and all of that interplays, of course. But what's happening on a short-term basis is one, I said in my work that I expect to see a strong rally in January. And if you go to the Economist that put out an article late last week, they talked about that gold has gotten off to its best start in 35 years. The safety play, they call it, is up 15% in a year-to-date basis as of Friday. That was Friday of last week. So gold's certainly doing its job here, but specifically on the 1,200 question, that's a breakout point is the way I look at it, and they're going to let it probably fiddle around there. Right now, I'm I'm seeing a lot of over sentiment, meaning there's too many gold bulls out there, even in the mainstream, which means we probably could rally even further. I mean, the most important thing about any market is not only price, which is critical, because no matter how the price got there, manipulated or not, I care that it's manipulated, but if I am objective, it's that price, regardless of what your idea is of the manipulation story. It's there. You can't argue that. And the other thing that's critical is volume. Is there a lot or a little? I mean, if everyone's running into a market, there's a lot of volume. That means you've got some sustainability. Well, what did I just say? I said that it's gotten off to the best start in 35 years. So that's a price mechanism. But what have the volumes been? And that's what you really need to ask. And what you've seen is that precious metals funds have seen their biggest 3-week inflows in investor money since June 2009. Okay, let's pause there for a minute. Since when? Well, basically since the first market to rocket up after the financial crisis of 2008 took hold, and everyone, regardless of their position on the planet, had to acknowledge the fact that something very, very scary had taken place. The financial system almost went off the cliff. And what was the first market to rebound and say, this is a place to be financially? Well, it was the precious metals markets. And what happened was huge volume started that market back up from that point. Well, what this article says in The Economist is that we have those kind of volumes again. So my idea is this, Dave. I think the 1,200 could hold for quite some time. I am different than Marty Armstrong and Clive Mon and some of these guys that say that we're going to see a new low. Do I know that for a fact? No. Is it possible? Yes. But, with 40 years in this market, when I see the kind of volumes that we've seen from the beginning of the year, the ability to get a new low with that much buying pressure that's taken place since the beginning of the year is a lot to overcome. And I don't think it can be overcome. Now, on a more, short-term basis, talking out the other side of my mouth, but I'm being very succinct, and I'm trying to be succinct, is that we will not see much more of a rally. I think you could probably see it into the summer. I think you might see, March, April, like we saw in 2011, because of a lot of reasons. I'm not going to be too concerned about the why for now. I'm just going to say watch prices go higher, and then I think you'll get some kind of a correction going on. But buying at these levels is safe, but it could go lower. In fact, I think it probably will, but not new lows. I disagree with, and I'm not trying to point names. I'm just trying to point out that, I read others' work. I look at what they say against stuff, and I like to acknowledge other people. I mean, there's some really good thinkers out there, and that helps me. I mean, you're one of them. I mean, you do, kind of the whole, you do the whole enchilada. I don't have time because my work requires that I look, markets only kind of thing, although the geopolitical thing is certainly, key.
One important question I wanted to ask you, China is going to start a yuan-based gold price fix in April. Is this going to be a game changer? Is this going to affect the gold market?
Yes and no. The answer is yes, eventually it will. In April, no. The real thing you need to look at is what is going on in the currency markets. I mean, we need, gold is like the it's like the old maid game. I mean, the game ends when someone's left holding the old maid. As an adjunct to that, and turn it around, doing the reciprocal of it, the game ends when whoever owns the physical gold ends up with that, and everything else is blown away. So I hope I made that analogy clear. It wasn't a great one, but it's the idea that it's the end of the end of the end. So having said that, what we really need to look at is what's going on in the currency markets prior to that end where only gold's standing. And silver is a subset, if you want to think of it in those terms. So we need to look at what takes place. I think it's September 30th, Dave, where the SDR includes the yuan. That's the key place. And that's where I'm looking to see what happens in their gold trading at that point in time. So April, May, June, July, August, that's sort of like warming it up, tuning it up, doing their manipulations, their way of, I'll say controlling or agitating or testing might be a better word, testing markets and see what the ebbs and flows are. And, if they throw in this kind of a demand, what happens in their market and that type of thing. But the real changer, to my view, and it's a pretty studied one, is what happens when they're including the SDR, what kind of influence that has in the global currency markets, and if it is, my words not theirs, necessary to start getting a better handle on the gold fix from a yuan perspective or not. So that's how I see it.
I guess back in August of 2015, the stock market started to fluctuate. We saw the stock market come down, and it was brought back up. It came down again, and we saw this all throughout 2015, the later part of 2015, and then we saw January, February, the market absolutely terrible. It's fluctuating once again. We're seeing highs, we're seeing very big lows, and we're continually seeing this. It seems like everything is all over the place at this point. Is this the beginning? Is this a sign that there are major problems coming?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I forget the gentleman's name, but one of the best books I've read on markets, and I've read, I don't know, hundreds, talked about, generally speaking, how markets work from undervalued to the professionals, accumulation, markup, and distribution. So it's like undervalued, they move a market up, and then they distribute it, because you're not going to get a profit until you have bought something low, moved it up to high, and now it's high. Now who do you sell it to? Well, you got to sell it to the unwary, the unwashed, the public, the pension funds, the money managers, the whatevers. So what we're seeing now is the distribution phase in the general equity markets. Take the SPX as an example, has taken place for the most part. Now the markdown is starting to happen. And so during these markdown phases, you'll see these counter rallies that are pretty significant. And of course, the talking heads will say, look, long-term stocks are the only place to be. Well, depends what you mean by long-term. If you mean, in a lifetime, that could be a very bad move. I mean, you could be in the 30s, and bought, and, you wouldn't really recover for, a couple of decades. So, you need a better metric than that to make money in the markets. So, yes, Dave, to answer your question, we're going to lull here, and you're probably going to see some kind of a counter trend rally, but the overall trends are significant, and the major trends are a ongoing global contraction in the physical economy, to be reflected more and more in the financial markets on a global basis. More uncertainty in the markets, people not understanding or wanting to have an answer of where to go and what's safe. And if you look at the John Exter model, where people cherish cash because if I have cash, I'm safe, is certainly the paradigm that's pervasive throughout. It's ubiquitous, everyone in every country almost. Not so much India and China, but most of the world thinks that if I have a physical piece of paper, that's the best thing I can have. I'm outside the banking system, and I'm safe because this will purchase something, until it doesn't. And
Right.
that's the problem. So what happens as the finality, going back to the old maid analogy, where those cards are taken, from the three players in the game, and there's less and less cards. The last card to be played, of course, is the gold card, and that's the last one standing. And that means that there has to be a giving up of the currency system, and that, of course, in my view, isn't going to take place for a few more years because, as I outlined earlier, you've got the SDR situation with China to try to keep them in the game. Now, my view on China and Russia is a little different than many of my compadres. And I'm not saying I'm right because the answer is I don't know. I really think it's legitimate. I don't think that they are really, pawns in the game of the global elite, and they're just playing this game to the final end so that they carve up the world betweenst them. Although that could be the case, I disagree. I think they really are a countervailing force. I think the AIIB is real. I think they have, I hate to say this, but I'll say it because I believe it. I really think they have a bigger heart than the Anglo-American Empire. I think that the AIIB really does want to build infrastructure and things for mankind that makes society better at large. I really do think that there's a semblance of power that wants to do good. But I digress again. We need to look from the ground up. We need to work from the ground up. We need to be better than we are now, and we need to be able to provide something for our friends and neighbors. That's the bottom line. We need to act in a way that you can be assured that that children watching you in public, your own children, your grandchildren, whatever, have something to strive to be. And it's a way of being. It's not a way of, what car you have or what kind of clothes designs, labels you wear. It has to do with the essence of humanity. And we've lost that almost completely. I mean, and I'm guilty of it too, but, I really try to keep my phone in my pocket during lunch, during meetings, anything like that. But just walking on the street, I mean, these people run into each other because they're looking at their cell phones crossing the street. It's gone, and the whole world's gone mad.
It definitely looks like the zombie apocalypse when you're walking around and no one is paying attention and they're just bumping into things and they're staring at their phone. And I know exactly what you're saying because I discussed this with my wife many, many times when we're walking around and we watch people and you're right, they're just on their phones, they're not paying attention, and society it looks like when an empire reaches a certain point and it's based on consumerism and no one is producing anything of real value, we've reached a point where everyone's they don't know what to do with themselves. And usually at this point, we see like Rome and all the other empires completely collapse. And it seems that's where we are at this point. We're at that point where we're at the end here, and it's starting to look like that, even in society, not just with the financial, not with geopolitical, but just looking inward at our country and the way people are today. It really does look like that.
Absolutely, and well said. I mean, I would urge the listeners to go watch the movie, and you can watch it for free on YouTube, the official version. You want to see it, say official version, but it's called Four Horsemen Film, and I'm in it. And it's not about me. I have a very small place, but it's about the Age of Empire and how it gets to the Age of Empire and what happens during the collapse of the Age of Empire. But at the end of the movie, it does shine some light on some solutions. And again, coming back to my meme with you, Dave, which is, I'm looking more and more at solutions. I want to talk not so much positive and, the correct thinking or positive thinking, which, does work, but that's not it. I mean, you can't think your way out of a problem. Well, you can. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with my own brain this morning. The point being is that watch that movie. You'll get a lot of good ideas. And all it takes is one good idea that you can implement to help yourself and someone else.
We talked about solutions and, what people can do. And they have to know about the problems because a lot of people don't know there's a problem. And if they don't know there's a problem, they don't think there's a need for a solution. But that's why I think we're all out here telling people, look, we have major problems here and we need to work on these problems, and we need to basically dissect what the real problem is, because when you go to the corporate media, you listen to the government, you're not hearing the truth, you're not hearing what's really going on. And basically you, myself, many other people have been dissecting, looking at the problems. And I know a lot of people have been hearing us for many, many years, and they're saying, okay, yes, we know we have these major problems. What do we need to do? And we need to look at everything and figure out, as a country, as a world, what we want. What do we want? Just like the founding fathers to the United States, they saw problems, they knew what the problem was, and they had to come up with a solution. So they created the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We need to do the same exact thing once again. We need, and I think one of our founding fathers, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, that said, I've given you these freedoms, this country for like 100 years, and you're going to have to fight for this again. Well, we lasted a little bit longer than that. But I see we're at that point once again where we're all going to have to come together as a people, not as a government, not as a central bank, not as neocons, not as any of these other things, but as a people, and say, something, we need to do something at this point. We need to take back what we had. We need to make the country great. We need to make the world peaceful. And I think that's where we need to go. But to get there, we have these problems. We have people, government in the way. We have certain groups in the way. And if we don't shine a light on these groups, people, individuals, we'll never change anything. And I'm looking for a big change. I'm looking for bringing us back to the way things, started out. And I'm hoping from where we're headed right now, which I do believe is a complete collapse of the system, maybe even more, that we can change this at this point. And that's been my message all along. Do you still see us heading into a period of collapse at this point?
Well, as many have said, we are collapsing. It is a process. It's not like an overnight situation unless, there's like a bank closure and they, reissue a new currency or whatever, which certainly could happen. But that alone would just be an event that everyone would mark as the collapse. But really, until that point in time, look at what the food supply did. Look at what the Baltic Dry Index is doing. Look at what the upheavals and the migration problem in Europe has done, and all of this. So it's collapsing right before our eyes. I agree with you. I think I would add on to it a little more even that, big honor of Gandhi, be the change you want to be. I mean, if you look at, when Franklin said, and the lady, this is all hearsay, who knows if it happened, but the lady says, what have you given us? And he says, a republic, man, if you can keep it. It's the rule of law where we're all equal under the law. But at that time, you have two things were really required. I say required, it was a must. And that was a high moral structure in the society. Didn't have to be Christian, although many were. But you had to have a high moral state, and you had to have the citizenry understand the law, which now is so convoluted. There's so many laws on the book. Who knows what you can do, but or not do, according to the rulers. Certainly not leaders, rulers. But coming back, I'd say, yeah, the movie is good. The Four Horsemen film, that'll give people an idea of kind of the total picture of where we are and what's collapsing and why. And then there are some solutions at the end of the film, but specific to your comment, Dave, let the change begin with me. What can I do? I mean, that's kind of been the theme throughout our conversation today, is that, if you're not bettering yourself, how can you have a better world?
David, tell us a little bit about your website and how people can reach you and what's coming up.
I'll be putting out our press release here in the next couple of weeks. Basically, the press release says, look, I look at a lot more than just the precious metals markets. We look at, a lot of things that we discussed on your show. Thank you for giving me the time. I'm trying to focus more and more in the Morgan Report, not only on the current system and where it's going and how you can protect yourself financially, but beyond that, what the next big meme will be. I'm looking at fintech, the financial technologies. There are people like you, Dave, out there that are making a difference, and they're coming up with not only Bitcoin, which circumvents the system, but other methodologies. So wouldn't it be nice if there was I'll call it subculture for now, that had an alternative payment system that wasn't held by the overlords. Wow, what a concept. And guess what? It's taking place. So that's one of the areas I'm going to focus more and more of my time in the movement.
Dave, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming back on.
My pleasure. Thank you.